Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I'm Tom Bailey, Dean of the University of Washington School of Pharmacy. And as Chair of the Board of Health Science Deans, let me welcome you to the 21st John R. Hogness Symposium. This symposium was established back in 1979 by the University of Washington Board of Regents to honor Dr. Hogness, who actually passed away not that long ago in 2007. He had a really remarkable, distinguished career as a physician, as a teacher, as a researcher, and a university administrator. He actually served as the 26th president of the University of Washington from 1974 to 1979. He was the first president of the Institute of Medicine of the National Academy of Sciences. He was president of the Association of Academic Health Centers and vice president of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And to top it off, he was also former dean of the University of Washington School of Medicine and medical director of the UW Medical Center. So really quite an incredible curriculum vitae. The symposium objectives are to inform and illuminate issues of healthcare policy on a national level, to involve health sciences students, and to be action-oriented and inspire all those present to become involved with the subject. So with that mandate, I think we probably could not be more on target with our topic and speaker today. The American Medical Association has officially classified obesity as a disease. We all know that we need to be a healthier society and to change the way we approach and manage our diets. We need solutions for our schools, restaurants, grocery stores, and indeed home kitchens. The 6 health science schools at the University of Washington, namely the schools of dentistry, medicine, nursing, pharmacy, public health, and social work, all participate in the planning of this important event. And I'd like to particularly thank the members of the symposium committee for their diligence and hard work in putting together this really outstanding program, which should be a very interesting discussion this afternoon. So with that, let me now introduce Dr. Noel Chrisman from the 2013 Hogness Symposium Planning Committee, and he is Professor, Psychosocial and Community Health at the University of Washington School of Nursing, and he will be introducing our speaker. Noel?
Well, I'm excited to see you all here, and I know that Dr. Hogness would have been too. He was a great admirer of innovation and a great innovator himself, and I think that's the kind of talk that we're going to hear this afternoon. He was Dean of Medicine when I first got here and then went to the presidency, so I don't think we worked closely together. I may have seen him in the hall every once in a while, but I know that today is really a testimony to his outstanding work in the past. And then now let me tell you about Dr. Wansink. He is something else, and I'm glad that you're here to hear about him. He's the John S. Dyson Professor of Marketing at Cornell, where he's also the director of the Cornell Food and Brand Lab and co-director of the Cornell Center for Behavioral Economics in Child Nutrition Programs. He's the co-founder of the Smarter Lunchrooms movement, something I know you're all going to want to sign up for. He holds a doctoral degree in consumer behavior from Stanford. He founded that food and brand lab at University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and then moved it, that was in '97, and then moved it to Ithaca in 2005. He took leave from Cornell for a couple of years between '07 and '09, and was the executive director of the Center for Nutrition Policy and Promotion in Washington, D.C., where he led the development of the U.S. Department of Agriculture 2010 dietary guidelines. So I guess we have to blame him for the funny new food pyramid that leads us all into more temptation. He's best known for his work on consumer behavior in food and for popularizing such terms as mindless eating and health halos. Wansink studies how microenvironments influence what and how much people eat and how much they enjoy it. He's the author of more than 100 academic articles and books, and received the humorous Ig Nobel Prize in 2007. Take a look at the Ig Nobel Prizes because they're wonderful, and now we get to hear him talk. Dr. Wansink.
Thank you, Dr. Chrisman and Dean Bailey, and thank you for taking your Monday afternoon to come to the Hogness lecture, the 21st one. What we're going to be talking about is mindless eating, from mindless eating to mindless eating better. Now, who has never, ever seen these maps before? Okay, good. So basically, they're color coding to tell us how fat we are state by state, right? So if you look at 1991 up in the corner, there's like a lot of light blue states, which were pretty much thin states. But as we progressed, 1996, we have a lot of dark blue states, which indicates we're getting a little heavier on average, to the point that being the overachieving nation we are, okay, we have to start inventing new colors for fatness. And so by 2003, we're starting to add yellow and red, and you can see where we're at there. I work with some incredibly cool people that are really, really fun, and we decided to figure out what would this look like. If we were to kind of take this projection and kind of look into the future to 2025, what would our country look like? You guys ready for this? Put on your glasses. Okay, that's just totally made up, okay? But it's in the right direction, let's say. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with 2 myths that make us fat. I'm going to show us some cool new research that we're doing that you could take home tonight and use, let alone use with patients or people you might work with. Then we're going to talk about some really neat things that we're doing to try to take this, in the spirit of Dr. Hogness, move this into an area that I think is really critical, and that is school lunchrooms. Now, what we're looking at here is policy not with a capital P, not with national policy, but policy with a small p, the type of policies that school districts, school lunchrooms can use to put in place to help kids pick up the apple instead of the cookie, all the while having the cookie available for them, okay? Then I'm going to end with some reminders of some burning questions you might have. Okay. Now, that's going to take about an hour, and after that, we're going to have 30 minutes for Q&A, so you can start writing down your questions now if you lose interest during the talk. Okay, now, a lot of you have had experience in labs before, and they might be the kind of labs with, white coats, test tubes, expensive equipment. Well, I've got a lab, but it's really a strange lab. It's a behavioral lab. And in fact, what it looks like your house. That is, if your house had one-way mirrors, and if your house had hidden cameras in it, if your house had scales under the table so that every time you ate a piece of Pop-Tart, it showed how fast you're eating. But what we can do with all these rooms is within about 3 hours, we can transform them to look like almost any eating environment you can imagine. Okay? So we can transform them to look like the inside of a restaurant, the inside of your living room, the inside of a bar, the inside of a dorm room or a living room. We've even made changes, working with a Boeing Dreamliner, we've even made changes to make one of these labs look like the inside of an airplane, with the idea being how can food be used while people are up in the air so that it makes you a little less ornery. On 6-hour flights, that when you're landing, you're not growling, but you're actually skipping off the airplane, because that would be a memorable day. What we do is we make these environments look like they do, then we change something. We might change lighting and see how it influences what people take, or how much they take, or how much they like it. We might change the conversation that's going on at the table by bringing in a Confederate who's been told ahead of time what your political views are, and they either agree with them or they incite your anger by disagreeing with them. And we see how that influences how you eat, what you choose, how much you like it. Because the whole idea here is to try to come up with transforming solutions to eating problems that are easy changes to make that can help us eat better, okay? And even though I think I have been the past president for the Society for Nutrition Education, I don't believe education is the solution to getting people to eat better. I think it's a lot easier for us to change our immediate environment than it is for us to change our mind. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Well, I'm going to start with two myths that that lead us to eat wrong. But before I do that, let me just give you an idea of what might happen in one of these labs.
Do you ever eat a whole bag of chips when you're not even that hungry? Why? Well, maybe there's something going on that you're not aware of. Finding out what it is could help change the shape you're in. At Cornell University, diners head for lunch at what looks like a restaurant, but is really a lab where students prepare to observe them as they eat. The diners are guinea pigs for research to uncover the secrets of our eating habits.
There's pasta alla bolognese.
Check out this test.
You can take as much as you want.
On this day, they tell the test subjects, you can have a free meal if you simply rate the food for us.
Have a good lunch.
Then the man in a blue shirt, acting as a waiter, says,
go ahead and get some water over there and I'll bring your right over.
That's an excuse for him to take the plate and secretly weigh it. There's a scale under that flowered cloth before bringing it to the diner and then doing this unappetizing thing.
That's gross.
To diner after diner.
I'll get you another plate. I don't feel comfortable like giving this to you.
That gets them to take a second plate and serve themselves again. But the trick is that the second plate is bigger.
Okay.
Enjoy.
This test is not about rating the food, it's about whether people take less food when they have smaller plates. This woman thought she put more food in a smaller bowl.
I actually noticed I put more in the smaller pasta bowl than I did in the larger plate.
But the opposite was true. She and most everyone put 25% more food on the bigger plates. We're not aware of what we're eating?
Oh, it's amazing. We eat with our eyes, not with our stomach.
Food psychology professor Brian Wansink runs the lab that's been doing this research. And now he's written up the results in a book aptly called Mindless Eating.
We really don't pay much attention to what we eat or how much we eat.
Well, I think I'm paying attention. I'm sure concentrating while I'm shoveling it in.
Well, most people believe that we know when we're full. Well, we don't really know when we're full.
So use small plates?
Oh, absolutely, because these are mindless ways. Now, this is going to lead us to our first eating myth. And this might have been about 7 years ago. We had just done some of the initial studies on this topic, and I was really kind of excited about it. And I was given a talk at the Institute of Medicine. So it's ironic that, I guess, or it's fortuitous that Dr. Hogness was actually the first president of the Institute of Medicine. But I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's filled with a lot of really smart people who all, for some inexplicable reason, have a British accent. Okay? No, they could be from Walla Walla, but it'd be like Walla Walla British, you know. And shortly after I get there, and I'm talking about something else, and I just found these results out. So parenthetically, at the end of the talk, I say, oh, wow, we found out this really cool thing, and blah, 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 blah. The first guy to grab the microphone says this, well, surely something as basic as the size of a bowl or plate wouldn't influence how much an informed, intelligent person eats. Now, if you look at this, I mean, this is a great question, because why do all of us have too much education? Well, it's because we believe in it, okay? And so we believe that, the solution to everything is education, as did this guy. So let's see what happens if we take really smart people, super smart people. These are super smart, motivated graduate students, and for 90 minutes, we do nothing more than tell them one thing. What we tell them is that if we give them a huge bowl of Chex Mix to serve out of, that they'll take more and eat more than if we give them a slightly smaller bowl of Chex Mix. Pretty complicated there. So what we'll do, though, to make sure they get it, is we'll lecture about it, and then I showed videos, I had them do demonstrations, I had them break into small groups to figure out how they could avoid ever having this happen to them, okay? We did interpretive dancing together. And at the end of 90 minutes, these were informed, intelligent, motivated people. They went back for a vacation around Christmas time. When they returned, I invited them to one of these sports bars. The name of it was Jillian's. It's It's a national chain. Anybody familiar with Jillian's Sports Bars? Oh, yeah. Kind of nice places, but what this sports bar had was it had 2 separate rooms that were identical, and then it had the big Super Bowl viewing room, and then pool tables and stuff. So when people got there, they were randomly assigned to 1 of 2 tables, 1 of 2 rooms, where there were tables that all had the snacks for the Super Bowl. And the snacks were in bowls of Chex Mix. God, we're not even hiding things. I mean, things are so transparent, it's embarrassing. So what happened is people would serve themselves, and as they got down to the end of the table, one of the researchers would come and intercept them and say, oh, hey, can you fill out this little card? We want you to guess who you think is going to win the Super Bowl. We're going to kind of do a pool, and you win a prize. So people go, oh, yeah, I got to do that. Got to find some place to put my bowl of Chex Mix, though. Well, the only place where they could put it was the corner of the table that was cleared off, under which there was a scale. Yeah. So they put it down. And since they put it down, it flashed in another room how much they'd taken. And what we find is that if you were given bunches of big bowls like this of Chex Mix, okay, or bunches of bowls that are slightly smaller of Chex Mix, you'll take and eat about 53% more Chex Mix if the bowls are slightly bigger. Okay, and what's going on? Well, the size of the bowl suggests that it's normal, appropriate, reasonable to take a lot more. It's a suggested cue, and we dutifully do so. I mean, to the point where if you did this every single day of your life, you would weigh, on average, about 19 pounds more than you weighed right now. Because eating, in this case, is about 240 more calories, but not realizing it isn't something you want to do every day, because it really adds up over time. But what do you suppose happened at the end of that time, after the game was over and they left, when they were coming out of the place, and he said, hey, you took about 50% more Chex Mix than those people. Do you think the size of the bowl had anything to do with it? What do you think people said? Oh, come on, are you kidding me? And the thing is, there's something called the intelligence trap. And the problem is that what it refers to is that most intelligent people can argue any side of a story or any side of a fact that they're motivated to argue. And so if you say, well, then why do you think you took more? Most people can come up with some reason. They say, well, one guy even said, I didn't have breakfast on Tuesday. My God, this is like Super Bowl Sunday. And it sort of gets at the notion that, wow, if we think we're smarter than a bowl, we're going to get beat almost every time. Okay? But, what I want you to do is think of the last time you overate. The last time you overate to the point where you said, God, I really wish I wouldn't have eaten that much. Okay? Now, try to think of a very specific occasion, okay? Is there anybody who can't think of an occasion where they overate? I mean, it might have been last Thanksgiving, but then it also might have been lunch. Now, why was it that you overate? And I'd like you to think for a second, just why was it that you think you overate? Because we should be perfectly calibrated. We eat 1,000 meals a year. We should know by now how much it's going to take to fill us up. So think, on that occasion, why was it that you ate so much to the point of regret? Now, if typical, about 11% of you would say, well, the last time I overate, and it'd be a mood-related issue. You'd say, well, I was really bored, or I had a really terrible day at work, or I was I was celebrating, or I was feeling down, but something related to mood, either low or high. That's about 11% of you. About 50% of you would say, oh no, the last time I overate, it's because I was really, really hungry. Okay, and then about 38% of you would say, well, the last time I overate, it's because of the food. The food was really, really good. Okay? So we wanted to say, well, what happens if you're to give people who aren't hungry food that isn't any good? Would they still overeat? And so one of the things we did was this is a big theater complex in the Midwest. We took people who had just eaten dinner within the last half an hour, and when they came to the theater, we gave them like free popcorn, okay? And we gave them like those, those popcorn tubs that, they're like this big and they cost like $14. Or we gave them the really big, the Holy Roman Empire sized popcorn things that are about this big and cost like $14.05, Yeah, I know. But this wasn't normal popcorn, okay? This was 5-day-old popcorn that had been sitting in a 60-degree entomology lab. Yeah, this is like, you couldn't even eat it. You like chewed on it. It was like styrofoam. It just, it'd dent a little bit and your teeth wouldn't even meet. So here's what happens when you give people good tasting popcorn. Typically what happens, they walk in the theater, they sit down, and they do this. Hoop, 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 hoop. The person next to them tries talking to them, they go, no, can't talk, eating. But what happens is that continues to the point where the average person who gets to the movie theater 5 minutes or more before the movie starts will have eaten 50% of their handfuls of popcorn, 50% of the handfuls they take, before the movie starts, before the trailers are over. Here's what happens, though, if you give people 5-day-old popcorn. They will go and they'll sit down, and they'll take a bite, and they'll wince. And you seem like trying to get it out of their teeth and stuff, and they'll set it down. And then they'll watch the movie for a while. And about 4 minutes later, they'll go, popcorn! They pick it up again, they eat it. Oh, they wince, they put it down. But the thing is, that continues through the entire movie. to the point that they will have eaten about 34% more calories of popcorn at the end of the movie than they would if they were given the smaller amount, okay? Smaller container. Both of them which are huge. But what do you suppose happens when people leave the theater again and we say, hey, do you know you ate about a third more than those people who had the smaller bucket? Was it because you were hungry? They go, no, I wasn't hungry at all. I just ate. In fact, I don't even know why you gave it to me. I tried to refuse it, but you forced it in my hands. Say, well, was it because it was good? They're like, oh, no, it was terrible. Now, so we even had 2 people come and try to get their money back from the popcorn. Okay. Oh, here's the invisible money you paid back. But if you say, well, do you think you ate more because the size of the bucket? What do people say? Oh, God, you're high. No, how can you come up with that? That's crazy. And then we find this happens over and over with all sorts of different cues. And even we've got something coming out in the Journal of Pediatrics in just a couple weeks that ends up looking at a lot of this stuff with kids. We find that kids, if you simply give them a larger cereal bowl, okay, like the type we typically eat from, that typical kid will eat about 44%, or will serve about 44% more and will eat most of that. But it doesn't matter if it's the skinniest kid or the heaviest kid. The size of these things just provide cues as what we think we should do. And since nobody kind of says, well, let me be really careful about how much I serve, one of these cues can have this major impact. Now, again, this would never happen to us, okay, because we're too smart for this. And it probably never happened to, let's say about 2,600 bariatric surgeons who were together at a conference. I mean, I don't think it happened to them. I mean, they know this stuff, obvious sort of stuff. So let's take a look. Wow, great dinner part Express Scripts throws. what do you suppose is happening here that might have messed up the way that you ate? Now, we did a bunch of things here, and maybe if we, at the end of the talk, I can talk about a bunch of the other things that we did. But one of the things that we did was simply change the size plates that were sitting next to desserts. Okay, this was a place where there were buffets and stuff, but there were probably about, I would say, 30 different dessert, or 20 different dessert bar stations, which all had the exact same desserts, but were in different parts of this big place. And we either put little bitty plates, or we put big plates. And of course, people could go to whichever of these 20 they wanted. They're all the same food, though. But one of the things we find is that people were serving onto these big plates, on average, took 36% more dessert. Okay. Now, I said desserts. Here's what the desserts were. Cookies, and this is in St. Louis. Cookies and fried cheesecake wedges. And I'm here to tell you, traveling to St. Louis is worth it if you can get a fried cheesecake wedge. Ew, them's good eating. Okay. But no, these are people who know about this. They were just given a keynote lecture on it 1 hour earlier. And all this stuff happens to everybody because we believe we're too smart to be fooled by it. Now, it's not just the size of plates. It's not just the size of serving bowls. It is even glasses. Now, we had this kind of cool study that came out just last week in a journal called Alcohol Use and Misuse, where we brought people in for happy hour for free wine. Woo! That's right. We brought them in for happy hour, but what we did is we changed a bunch of things related to the glasses they were given. We found that simply changing the shape of wine glasses dramatically changes how much people pour. Even if you set a wine glass down on a table and you pour into it, you're going to pour about 11% less than if you hold that same wine glass. Okay? Everything else being equal, you're going to pour about 12% more white wine into a glass than red wine because you don't see white wine very much. So you just kind of keep pouring until it's like, oh my God, it's overflowing. just as I wanted. So a lot of these cues mess people up, but let's go back. Let's even see the way these cues work with professional bartenders.
His tests also found that people pour less liquid into tall, skinny glasses than short, wide ones. Would even a professional bartender fall for that?
Pour the amount of whiskey you'd pour here if you're going to be pouring a whiskey in the rocks.
Wansink asked the owner of this bar to pour a shot into both kinds of glasses.
There we go.
All right.
Were they equal shots? Watch what happens when Wansink pours them into measuring beakers.
Ah, look at that.
He had poured much less into the tall, skinny glass.
That's quite a difference.
It's almost half as much.
In fact, when Wansink asked dozens of bartenders to pour, they averaged a third more liquor in the short, fat glasses.
I guess I'm gonna have to buy more taller glasses.
That's right. It's kind of cute that shortly after we discovered this research, I was making a presentation to the National Rotary Club Association. I don't know if you know Rotarians, but these are tremendous leaders in their communities. They're tremendous. There's not a Rotarian I've ever met who isn't like unbelievably outgoing, but they're really fun, they're outgoing, they're leaders. And again, just parenthetically, I happened to mention this study at the end of the conference. And I show this, and I said, well, do you know what that means, that you pour so much more into short, wide glasses than tall, skinny glasses? Do you know what that means? They're going, short, wide glasses, short, wide glasses. I'm like, well, I guess you got the point, but it's not the point I wanted you to get. And then about the same time, I was giving a talk to this dietetics group, and again, the talk was on something totally different. But you know, those of you who do research, we come up, we find stuff, we get so excited, you just can't shut us up about it. So, of course, the talk's about something else. And again, parenthetically, at the end of the talk, I happen to mention this thing. Well, regardless of what the first 60 or 90 minutes were, the first person to run down and grab a microphone says, this is amazing. She says, and this is like almost overacting. This is like Charlton Heston asking a question. She grabs the microphone and she says, if even the professionals are fooled by the cues around us. What hope is there for the rest of us? And her eyes are closed, and I'm half expecting like somebody in the back to start doing like a slow clap. And I remember saying, well, within about 2 days of us discovering this research, which of course is like 3 years before it eventually gets published, but anyway, within about 2 days of us discovering this research, we got rid of all the short white glasses in our lab, okay? Within 2 weeks, almost all of us got rid of the short white glasses in our home. Because if something is going to mess you up repeatedly, you can say, okay, now that I know that, it shan't happen. But you're not going to pick up a glass and say, must not over pour. No, we've got lives. We've got things that are more fun to think about and talk about and do than stare at a glass and tell everybody around us to be quiet so we can concentrate. No, it's a whole lot easier just to get rid of those short white glasses if that's what's messing us up. So like even this dude, okay, so we did this study in Philadelphia with 86 Philadelphia bartenders. And you say, why should Philadelphia be different? Well, I was a professor at Penn at the time. That's why it was done there. But we find that after we showed these guys they overpoured about 30% in the short white glasses, we said, okay, try it again. And what do you think happened the second time? I mean, within 2 minutes of being shown that they're biased, the same thing. I mean, they poured 20% more the second time. And so that's the powerful thing is change the cues around us. Don't try to change our mind. I mean, when the research came out, it's published in the British Medical Journal, we ended up taking it to all sorts of these casual dining chains like TGI Fridays and Olive Garden and some of these and saying, look, this is a win-win thing you can do. You get rid of your short, wide glasses and have tall, more narrow glasses. You're going to be wasting or spending less money on alcohol, and your patrons aren't going to get tanked while they're here. They're not going to leave thinking they had 2 drinks, or really they had 2.6 drinks. And there's a lot of these changes that can be made that can help us eat better, but that are also the best interest of these institutions. Well, that leads us to the second eating myth, and let me ask you this. If I were to say, think of dinner last night. How did you know that you were through eating dinner last night? Okay. You don't have to answer it out loud, but just think, how did you know it was time to stop eating dinner last night? Just think. Well, I'll tell you what the French say. I was living in France a while back, and I asked 150 sophisticated Parisians how they knew they were through eating dinner last night. Number one response is, I know I'm through eating dinner when I'm no longer hungry. Second is, I know I'm through eating dinner when the food no longer tastes good. Now, those are internal cues, right? They're using their taste buds in their tummy to say, stop. About 6 months after that, I was back in the States, and I asked the same question to 150 Chicagoans. Okay. I asked them the question, the number one answer was, I know, when I said, how do you know you're through eating dinner last night? They said, I know I'm through eating dinner when my plate is empty. Yeah. The second was, I know I'm through eating dinner when the TV show I'm watching is over. Now, those are external cues. They're using their plate, they're using the person next to them, they're using the television set to say, stop! And the problem with external cues is almost all the external cues we have in our house are going to push us in the direction of overeating, because they're external cues of that food being really convenient. They're the external cues of that food being really tasty, or the food being really, really attractive. Almost all those are going to push us in the wrong direction, because we're not using our taste buds and tummy, we're using our eyes and things like this. So it raises the question, what would happen if our plate never emptied? Would we just continue to eat like the family dog until we exploded? Or maybe I'm the only one with a dog that dumb, but okay. Well, there's a lot of people out there who say, no, no, no. People can self-regulate. They know when they're full, they eat a little bit too much, then they cut down the next day. Well, let's take a look at this. We developed this. This is the eating myth. People know when to stop. So we developed this bottomless soup bowl. Okay. So we took a bunch of soup bowls and we drilled holes in the bottom of the soup bowls. We took a bunch of restaurant tables. Not a way to make friends with restaurant owners. We took a bunch of restaurant tables, we drilled holes in the restaurant tables, and then we took this food-grade tubing and popped it to the bottom of the bowl, sealed it, guided it through the hole in the table, and then up over to these big, hot 6-quart cauldrons of soup. Okay. So if you look at this woman here in the lower left, as she starts eating, that level of soup is going to dutifully go down as she eats. But the second she stops, it's going to imperceptibly start to rise again. And this is going to be to the point where she will have to eat 6 quarts of soup before she'll ever see the bottom of that. Now, if we were in that situation, we would know something's going on, right? Because why? Because we're smarter than a bowl. But we did this study with about 150-some people. Guess how many people figured something was going on in the study? Yeah, 2. Very good. 2 people. One person dropped a napkin under the table and you know, he sees all this Borg-like tubing under the table. He's like, ah! Yeah. And then this other person, this is like a couple weeks later, this other person, I guess forgetting that this wasn't a Viking feast, you know, he starts channeling some, I don't know, medieval relative. And he grabs the soup bowl and he lifts it up like this. So, I mean, this is tomato soup that's in the soup bowl. So this thing slithers up. It looks like a coral snake coming out in the middle of the table. And people are going, wah! The guy next to him screamed. The woman tipped over a chair. And this thing, in the meantime, it's like spurting soup, like up past. So, yeah, it was a moral dilemma whether we get rid of that data or we keep it. No, so we had to get rid of those 2 people. Everybody else, again, this part of the study only lasted 10 minutes. And then they got their normal course of food. And they didn't compensate during that time. But during that time, the typical person with a refillable soup bowl ate 73% more soup. 73%. But if you said, oh man, are you full? They'd go, no, how can I be full? Look, I still have half a bowl of soup. And this is the powerful thing. Our stomach is a terrible, terrible indicator as to whether we are full or not, okay? And I think it's one reason why, you know, if you ever read any of these, things by dietitians, they'll say, never ever eat out of a package, okay? At least dish that Ben & Jerry's ice cream out in a little bowl, so at least for one moment you're going to know how bad of a boy or bad of a girl you're going to be. Okay, but if you just sit there, you know, at midnight, in a black kitchen lit up only by the freezer light, eating your chubby hubby ice cream, before you know it, you're going to look down and you're going to say, wow, is that all there is? Because we don't really, our stomach is a much cruder measure of how full we are than our eyes. So that's why we use our eyes and not our stomach. Oh, actually, there's where the last remaining soup bowl table in my garage. Well, let's look at some of the solutions that there might be for homes and communities. And if your immediate environment causes you to overeat, well, I guess the easiest, simplest thing to do is to change it so it doesn't, okay? So for instance, if big plates cause you to serve more, well, use smaller plates. If big bowls cause your kid to eat 44% more Fruit Loops, wow, don't give them big bowls. Okay? if wide glasses cause you to pour more red wine than white wine glasses, well, don't use white wine glasses. If eye-level foods end up being consumed much more frequently than foods that aren't eye-level, well, don't put them at eye level. So we found that if you look at a cupboard, or you look at a refrigerator, or you look at a pantry, the very first thing you see, you're 3 times as likely to take than the 5th food you see, okay? But what do we usually put in the front of our refrigerator, the front of our pantry, the front of our cupboards? It's our favorite thing, and our favorite thing is not celery sticks. But why not just rearrange the playing field so it's biased in favor of the healthier stuff by just rearranging the stuff we do, putting the healthier stuff in the middle of the cupboard or refrigerator? Well, we want to look at if we're mindless eaters or they're mindless solutions. And when the book Mindless Eating came out, I mean, over the years, we get a number of people writing in and saying, look, I made one change, or I made just 2 changes, and I lost this amount of weight over this period of time. And what strikes me is that they fall into 2 categories. The changes they make are pretty much ones that are just based straight out of our studies that they read and said, well, let me try that. But then the other changes are the ones that are just like wacky. I mean, you'd say, oh, I cannot believe that works for anybody. But, you know, it shows that there are 99 ways to Rome. There's 99 ways to change the things we want. And some of those things are very stylized. But so one of the things we looked at was we said, let's just take some of these changes that we found and see which ones appear to work better across a general population, okay? So we recruited 2,000 volunteers and blah, 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 and we randomly assigned people for 3 months to one change, okay? Just randomly assigned them. You know, so some people were asked, use smaller plates, eat with the TV set off, eat only at a dining room table, move your candy dish 10 feet away, things like that, okay? And they asked to do these for 3 months, and they were every month they were asked to kind of come in and log how often they'd done things and blah, 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 blah. Okay. And then self-reported weight loss and stuff. And so what we found that's interesting has nothing to do with the changes themselves. No, this is published in a medical journal just last December. But what we found was interesting was that the typical pattern, or one common pattern for weight loss, and like I said, I think most of these, I mean, some of them cause people to lose weight, some actually cause people to gain weight. But let's say using the small plate caused the typical person to report losing about 2 pounds a month. Okay. But what was weird is the pattern. The pattern wasn't 2 pounds in month 1, 2 pounds in month 2, 2 pounds in month 3, which we would think, right? If they were equally adherent to doing that every night, that's what you'd expect. Here's what the pattern for a lot of these people ended up looking like. A lot of them, maybe 60% of them. 1 pound the first month, 2 pounds the second month, and 3 pounds the third month. Now that's crazy. That didn't make any sense compared to what we were thinking about. And we scratched our head trying to figure what was going on. We tried to look at other parts of the data. And we couldn't really come up with why is this weight loss not uniform, okay? Why is it linearly increasing? And about that same time, I was being considered to be the executive director for the White House to be in charge of the dietary guidelines, so my mind was starting to be elsewhere, and so I kind of left the lab, kind of running in kind of a maintenance level, and moved down to Washington, D.C. for the rest of the term. But when I was down there, something happened that was very, I think, illustrative. I was, now I'm going to talk about a couple of people here. These people know I'm talking about them, so okay. But I was given a talk for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which was my department, in Denver, and they had a nice reception for me afterwards. And afterwards, this woman and this guy came up, and the woman says, "Oh man, we made this 1 or 2 changes. We made one change about 11 months ago, and my husband, I lost 32 pounds, and my husband lost 45 pounds. And the change we made, is we never have a lunch or a dinner. We never sit down for lunch or dinner unless there's both a fruit and a vegetable on the table. Okay? Now, we don't have to eat it. It just has to be on the table. I mean, it can be like a banana from February. It doesn't matter. You can be plastic fruit. Actually, it doesn't matter. And, no, and you can think of 100 reasons that is really pretty brilliant. Because all of a sudden, if you're doing that, other things happen. First of all, there's the option of eating something that's less calorie dense. You might think twice about the other stuff you put in your table. You might, so you can think of a lot of reasons that might work. But I said to her, yeah, that's really amazing. But I said, why do you think your husband lost 45 pounds over the year and not just 32? And she goes, She goes, she says, you know what it was? She said, after a couple months, he felt so good about himself. You could say in parentheses, empowered, or, he had a higher degree of self-efficacy, whatever. But she said, after a couple months, he felt so good about himself and his success that he started adding other things. like for example, instead of drinking beer, he drinks red wine. And I'm like, wow, why would that make any difference? And she goes, oh, he doesn't like red wine. and it's like, this is interesting. But then shortly after that, I was given a series of talks throughout the upper Midwest. So this was like in North Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, going around. And I was given a talk in Grand Forks, which has a big obesity station that some of you guys might know of. And it was a late night talk. It was like something like 8 o'clock or something. I think Aerosmith didn't show up, so I think I had to do it instead or whatever. I'm not sure. And so I'm giving this talk, and there's a balcony. And there's this guy is in the far corner of the balcony during the whole talk, but he's standing up and he's got this coat on. It's just it's closed. And so we finished the thing, and I'm with my person's helping me, and it's over. So we were kind of packing things up, and I'm just kind of talking with him. And all of a sudden, I see this guy come out. The auditorium's almost empty. The guy comes out of the balcony. He comes down the side. His coat's still closed, and he goes, I've been waiting all night to show you something. And I'm saying to myself, oh, God, please let it be a gun. So he opens his coat, and he goes, look at this sweater. He goes, this sweater was skin tight on me 7 months ago. I lost 35 pounds in 7 months, and all I did was make one change. When I get home from work, I eat oatmeal. And things aren't registering. And he says, well, typically what happened in the past is I came back home from work, and my wife would make dinner for us. And so, we'd watch TV, and about, 7:30 or 8, I'd be hungry for ice cream, so we'd have ice cream, and, He says, but because I have oatmeal when I get home, what happens is we don't eat dinner until 7:30. Because we eat dinner at 7:30, we watch TV, but I'm not hungry because I just had dinner really late. I went, oh, well, that's pretty cool. And then I said, but I don't think somebody's going to lose 5 pounds a month by not eating ice cream. And he goes, no, he says, what else happened also is that we even just stopped eating dessert at dinner time except on weekends. And what this points to, I think, is really cool, and it's really, really encouraging to us. And we work with a lot of different patients that get referred to us from other places. What's really encouraging, because what it shows is that we don't have to get somebody to transform their life wholesale starting tomorrow. If what we can do is find something that gives them a little bit of traction, okay, it seems that traction begets more and more traction, that more and more traction begets new ideas that they want to try that are more stylized to their lives. And eventually, this is something that becomes successful, not because we told them to make 100 lifestyle changes, but because we told them to do one that stuck. And I think this is very, very powerful, and it gives us, when we have people who get referred to us because they have some strange behavior problem, eating problem, and we're kind of told to see if we can come up with a behavioral solution for it. All we do is come up with one. We just tell them to do one thing. And I think that's what causes this stuff to really take off. And that's tremendous encouragement for those of us in the health field. Well, you know, it's interesting. We often look at obesity and we say, "Oh my God, it's unsolvable. It's the next black plague on our blight in our country." What's interesting is we did this study a while back. It's not published yet, but we looked at 2,500 people. These are all women, actually. 2,500 women. And it's easy to see that the obesity thing as being a really major crisis because we watch, TV shows like The Biggest Loser, Bridezilla wedding gown makeovers, or whatever. We say, "Oh my gosh, there's all these people that are out there who are 400 pounds. What can be the solution for a 400-pound person?" What's interesting, though, is I think that kind of throws us into sort of an area of being maybe overly panicky about things. Because we did a study about 2,500 people, and 4 out of 5 people said they would be happy if they lost, on average, about 18 pounds of weight. Now, that's not losing 300 pounds to win America's Biggest Loser. That's essentially losing about 1.5 pounds a month, which is probably pretty doable when we look at making some small changes and not trying to come up with a solution that's going to cause everybody to weigh 165 by next November. Okay. So I want to talk about taking this behavior. We've been working a lot with, you can call this anything you want to. Some people, the trendy word now is called behavioral economics. But we've tried to come up with how we can take this into schools, how we can actually take changes like this and get kids to eat better without them really knowing about it, without having to tell them, "An apple's healthier than a cookie. I told you," okay? And we started something called the Smarter Lunchroom Movement. And right now, this is in over 25,000 schools, and it's going to be in the entire state of Michigan by the end of this month, which is where I'm flying tomorrow. And about 5 years ago, I got a call from the New York State Department of Health. He had just visited our lab a short time ago. He said, "Look, we are going to give all these little grants to all these different school districts in New York State to increase the sales of whole fruit, apples, bananas, oranges, peaches, by 5%. And he said, what we need to know is how much do these grants have to be so that they can subsidize fruit to drop the price of fruit? Okay, how much, if the fruit's 50 cents for an apple, how much do you have to cut the price of fruit in a school so that kids eat 5% more? Well, again, it's one of those things that if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If the only tool you have is, well, it's got to be financial incentives or it's got to be banning something, you try to look at that as a solution for everything. Let's take a look at schools in these areas. Pretty dismal. Okay, here's a lunchroom. That apple bowl will be, that apples and oranges are going to be in a steel chafer pan, I'm sorry, an aluminum chafer pan in the far corner under that sneeze shield. Dark, dingy. You have to contort yourself to kind of grab that really mushy apple. And we said, well, maybe the solution isn't to cut the price to 45 cents. Maybe instead what you want to do is just say, look, take your fruit, put it in a nice bowl, put it in a well-lit part of the line. Period. And so the initial test district was 8 schools, and 5 schools said, I don't know, it sounds stupid, but we'll try it. And sales there went up within a semester about 103%. Not 5%, 103%. Simply by putting in some bowl the lunch lady had in her basement and putting it in a well-lit part of the line. 2 schools said, it's never going to work. Sales there went up to 0%. And 1 school, I guess, didn't get the memo, okay? Because we're looping back when I'm in this big conference call with everybody on it, and they said, yeah, I think we did it wrong. and the people in my lab are just super, super nice people, but they're also very, very funny people. And so they're trying to bite their fingers and not laugh. And I said, well, what did you do? And the food service manager says, well, we put it in a nice bowl, and then we went to the closet and we found this desk lamp that wasn't being used, and so we put the desk lamp right next to it and turned it on. And so, again, at this point, I'm having to hit the mute on the speakerphone because, people are spitting milk out of their nose and they're starting to cry and stuff. And and after things settled down, I said, how did that go? And she goes, well, fruit sales have gone up 187%. So we now change it. Put it in a nice bowl next to a desk lamp. So this started something else. And the USDA at that same time was saying, hey, here's our initiative. What we want to do, a lot of salad, about, I think, 2/3 of most schools, middle schools and high schools, have salad bars. But a lot of people don't eat at them. And they say, we need to know, we want you to do a study to tell us, what do we need to do? Do we cut price or do we add additional stuff? Like those little Barbie-sized corn on the cobs, And again, if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. It's like, I'll change price or maybe add something. So let's take a look at what a typical junior high room looks like. So we have people come in through that upper door up there, little junior high kids, baseball hat on backwards, The a la carte line's there, hot lunch stuff's here, cash register down here, and this beleaguered, mulchy salad bar is over to the right, It's composting every moment that goes by. And so they're like, okay, what do we do? Baby corn or cut the price? And we say, well, what, this salad bars, these things tend to be movable, so let's do this. Let's move it 10 feet. And here's what happens if you move a salad bar 10 feet. So you have the little boy, he's gotten what he gets every day, pizza. His baseball hat's on, he shuffles up. He hits that salad bar and he's got to commit one direction or the other to get around it. And so he commits and goes around it. And what happens, that goes on again and again and again for the next 2 weeks. And all of a sudden, after 2 weeks, he decides, what the heck, there's no baby corn here, but there's little tomatoes. And what we found in 2 weeks, this cost nothing, that daily salad sales increased 200 to 300% within 2 weeks. And I think it could have even been higher than that, except that they weren't used to ordering salad. They just did it in September, first of the school year, and it lasted a year. So what it does is it raises the bigger question, what could be done to a school? What could a school do for less than $50 that would get kids to buy more of the healthy stuff, to buy less of the less healthy stuff, but importantly, not scare anybody away, okay? Meaning, get more kids to eat there, because schools make more money the more kids that buy a school lunch. Now, we can kid ourselves by saying, school lunches are terrible. The reality is that 3 out of 4 people who get a school lunch eat better than they do if they don't get a school lunch, okay? It may not be the greatest stuff, but at least it's not a bag of Funyuns and a Mountain Dew. It's not, I'm not kidding, it's not ordering pizza and having it delivered to a side door in the middle of lunch. It's like, that is brilliant. So, it's easy to say, hey, school lunchrooms, they should only have escarole and tofu there. And you are going to be serving that to nobody very quickly. So what do you do to get people to buy more of the good stuff, less of the bad stuff, all the while giving them choice and increasing overall participation? And so what we did is we started doing a lot of work in school lunchrooms, and we said, God, there are stupid, easy things you can do. We found that the very first thing a person sees in line, they're 11% more likely to take than the third thing they see in line. Well, so why not put the healthier thing first and give it a little bit of an edge? We found that simply putting, this is just crazy, that simply putting contact paper over a refrigerator like where the ice cream is, decreases by about 28% the percentage of kids who take ice cream. Moving cookies and putting them behind the line so a kid has to say, can I have a cookie, decreases dramatically how many people actually request cookies. Because it's a little bit of an extra effort, and they go, oh, well, whatever. We found that simply naming something, and this is crazy, you can't believe this works, simply giving something a name, calling something power peas instead of peas, calling something crunchy carrots instead of carrots, increases the percentage of kids who take it by about 28%, okay? Because it's very suggestive. And the thing is, it doesn't matter how stupid or dorky that name is, it seems to work. Let me give you, when we talk about stupid and dorky, we'll move to this slide here. Here we go. Hearty vegetable soup, clam chowder, hamburger, large hot dog, and grill chicken roll. Is that like a verb? I mean, do I have a job? So it doesn't matter how ridiculous these things are, they have an impact. But let me give you an idea. It's hard for us to believe this would happen. The same way it's hard for us to believe that big bowls cause people to eat more. Let's take a look.
The masterminds behind the cafeteria redesign are Cornell University professors David Just and Brian Wansink. I wanted to know how they're going to basically trick teens into eating right. So what are we doing here?
The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a bunch of the milk, put it in front, so if a person's thirsty, at least they have the option of picking something up, and at least they have to reach over the white milk if they want to pick up a flavored sugared beverage.
Step 2. They took the pizza, which was the first thing in the lunch line, and moved it towards the back. And the veggies and the healthy bean burrito moved right to the front. Step 3, they renamed the healthy food.
We find that changing something as small as calling these mixed vegetables California blend or the Big Bed bean burritos increased sales by about 27%.
Step 4, they moved the fruit from a plastic tub into a pretty fruit bowl. And finally, they took the cookies and put them just out of reach.
They're going to have to ask one of the food service workers to help pick it up. We think that's just enough of a barrier to keep some percentage of kids from saying, whatever, I'll have an orange.
The professors rolled up their sleeves, made their changes, and now it's lunchtime.
Oh, there she's getting her tray.
She grabbed a sandwich.
She's getting an Arizona iced tea, I think.
An orange juice.
And she got the cookie. So, Samantha, this time you didn't get the cookie and you got a piece of fruit instead. Why'd you get the fruit this time? Why do you think?
I don't know.
This was an unbelievable success. Fruit increased by 102% simply by putting it in a nice bowl.
The sweet drinks were also harder to get to, and Jane, Marcy, Richie, and Levante fell right into our trap. Last time they grabbed Gatorade, Snapple, and Arizona iced tea, but this time...
Well, the water was just in front, so I just grabbed it.
Sales of sugary drinks plunged by 17%, while purchases of easy-to-reach milk soared 46%.
Whatever was easiest to reach, that was good enough for them, and that was enough to get them to change.
Another hit, the Big Bad Bean Burrito, sold out for the first time ever. The professors say, on average, students' plates this time around contained about 18% fewer calories, and they made healthier choices.
Do you remember what that girl said when they said, Samantha, last time you took the cookie, but this time you took the apple. Why'd you do that? What'd she answer? I don't know. But that's why these changes, as boneheaded as they appear, have such a major impact, because most people are not thinking what they're doing when they're in these environments. They would rather forego a whole lot to have 5 more minutes to talk with their friends. They're not saying, well, let me estimate the calories in that chocolate chip. It just doesn't happen. Well, I mean, even Springfield's Quickie Mart can get into the action. So here you go. The donuts are way over there. I think I'll have some fruit. My cunning choice architecture will soon have Homer eating healthy. But these implications are all around us. I mean, these things that we find for schools can be used by parents to get their kids eat better, but they could also be relevant for us, okay? Now, we spend a lot of time going to academic conferences, right? Now, think of the last time you went to an academic conference, they had a nice breakfast buffet, okay? you remember what we had first? Well, I can tell you that you're very likely, in fact, about 70% likely to have first taken the first thing you saw. So I was giving this talk to a, this is a group of healthcare professionals in Salt Lake City. And so from 9 to 10, I did the talk about these cues. And one of the things that I even talked about was a lot of this stuff going on. And at lunchtime, or at breakfast the next day, rather, what we did is we set up 2 breakfast lines. And when people came, we sent them randomly to one line or the other. But they were set up in opposite orders of health. People saw cheesy eggs first, then bacon, then fried potatoes, then I think like a roll. And then they started seeing the healthy stuff, the yogurt, the granola, the fresh fruit. So they either went in that order or they went in the reverse order. Okay, they saw that healthy stuff first. But the thing is, it didn't matter what they saw. You can see here, 90% of the people, or I should say 85% of the people took fresh fruit if that's the first thing they saw. Okay? 80% of the people took cheesy eggs if it was the first thing they saw. But if it was the last thing they saw, that dropped to about 30%. 2/3 of everybody's plate was comprised of the first 3 things they saw in line. It didn't matter what those 3 things were. Now, one thing we could do is we could legislate all buffet owners to put healthy foods first. But another thing we could do is we could say, okay, well, next time I go to a buffet, let me start with the healthy stuff. Very easy ways to nudge us to start eating a lot healthier. So our goal by the end of next year is to be in 30,000 schools with this. We've got an e-toolbox with case studies, simulations, demonstrations. We're working with departments of education across the country to actually teach them how to train the trainers. We're getting CECs for clinicians, dietitians, and trying to arm people to go out and do this in a big way themselves. Well, in conclusion, I want to go back to you. What do you want to impulse buy the next time you go to Pottery Barn? Fruit bowls. Oh yeah, fruit bowls and small plates. Yeah. How do you want to eat Ben & Jerry's ice cream? Yeah. By the refrigerator light? No. Dish it out in a small dish, because at least you're going to know how bad of a boy or girl you're going to be. What do you want to put in your home counter? Fruit bowl. You know, so we did this kind of cool thing a while back. We had all these people put fruit bowls on the home counter, and we found out 2 amazing things. First thing was we found is that it doesn't do nothing for 2 weeks. The first week it's out there, people walk by and they go, whoa, what the hell? Keep away from that. The second week, it doesn't really do anything. But where it starts getting traction, where it starts working, is after 2 weeks. All of a sudden, it doesn't look like some foreign thing that's been teleported from, I don't know, Spock's planet. You know, it looks like it belongs, and we find that it takes about 2 weeks for things to work. But it only works in homes that had the fruit bowl within about 2 feet of a commonly walked pathway. So you put it in the middle of your kitchen table over there, it's not going to disappear very fast. If you put it right next to the keys, where you hang the keys up in the wall, gone. It's interesting stuff. And I know a bunch of you do things in the field. I would really strongly encourage you, when you do these things in the field, to actually do what we hate to do, which is actually go into homes or go into the field and watch things happen. Because it's amazing the cool things we can learn about why things backfire without knowing it. Well, thank you very much for inviting me for this honor.
There is time for questions, and after that, there's food. We won't want to eat it downstairs.
I wonder if this makes you think a little bit more about taking seriously claims that Americans are, or cultural American kind of things are, like Americans like big trucks, Americans like a lot of food, if you believe that as much anymore. And I guess the other way is if you think that this maybe highlights more the importance of path dependency.
Path dependency in what way?
Like the grocery stores are clearly aware of some of the problems of path dependency, right? Which is that you start setting something up in a certain way and that people start following it in that way, so that the importance of the initial setup is more important than what people actually think that they want.
Yeah. You know, There's a great observer of social behavior. His name is Jerry Garcia. And Jerry Garcia one time said, relevant to your point, too much of anything is just enough. And I think we see this in America. We went, and I lived over to Europe a couple of times, and you know, these little microscopic refrigerators. It's like, are you kidding me? This is for Barbie. It's not for me. You know, they have these little bitty kitchens, little bitty cupboards, little bitty cars. You have to, you know, I have to walk up steps with groceries. So of course you're going to eat less, and whereas we have just the opposite around here. But one of the things I think that's important for us to keep in mind, and this is something where I think a lot of really good things are going, is that grocery stores, for instance, they do know some stuff, but we give people in marketing, whether they be fast food restaurants, packaged goods, or whatever, a whole lot more credit for being a whole lot more insightful about consumer behavior than they really are. I know when I'm talking to them, they go, really? Wow, really? Really? And especially if we look at grocery stores, what happens, there's a lot of pattern matching that goes on. Let's say your local Safeway. Your local Safeway, the guy's more worried about whether the cashier and teller or cashier on line 6 is stealing, or whether the butcher dude and the cashier 3 are seeing each other. He's more worried about those day-to-day things than he is about saying, let me think about orchestrating behavior. So what happens is that with a chain like Safeway, they'll know that there's a store that's in Alameda that has unbelievably high revenue per square foot in produce, as an example. So all of a sudden, that will kind of go out, and it'll be like, okay, well, what can we do in our store then to rearrange the way our layout is so that it mimics what appears to be a successful way to get people to buy more fruits and vegetables. And so a lot of what's going on is pattern matching with what they believe are success stories. And I think there's a lot of ways that we're pushing to get grocery stores to do profitable things that are win-win. Because grocery stores, they want to sell more fruits and vegetables because they make a lot more money selling fruits and vegetables than if they sell Fruit Loops. Okay? And the reason that is because you don't ever throw away Fruit Loops. You throw away lettuce that goes bad, all of a sudden you're throwing away all the money you spent buying it in the first place, not just a margin. So we're working with some of them to do this. Actually, we've got an entire island in Denmark called Bornholm, where we're working with 11 of the 12 grocery stores there, trying a bunch of these new things to see what we can do to get people to eat healthier. Candy-free aisles, things like this. Great question. Yes?
So just small question. You had a slide where you had smaller plate sizes and the pounds that people lost per month. And on that same slide, you had some changes people made and then they gained per month. And one was eating oatmeal. And I thought that was what you were supposed to do.
Oh, that's great. She says, well, would you have like the Hubble telescope next to you? I mean, how do you even see that in the slide, man? Wow. Yeah, so one of the things was we gave people a bunch of different 20 things that have worked for a lot of other people, but when we give these to a general population, so we find if somebody likes oatmeal and they eat oatmeal, typically people eat oatmeal every single day. If you know somebody who's like that, it's a skinny person. Everybody I know who eats oatmeal every morning is a skinny person. So why, when we give that to a general population, do people start gaining weight? Yeah, because they don't like oatmeal. Okay, the people who decide to oatmeal are self-selected people. When we give a general population, we say, eat oatmeal every morning, they're like, oh, God, I hated that stuff ever since I was a kid. So what do? Yeah, they make it bearable by putting sugar in, by putting all sorts of other sort of stuff in. Or what they do is they say, God, I'm going to the hassle of making this garbage. I'm not going to eat half a cup. I'm going to fill that up since I'm going to have. So they eat bigger portions. Or the third thing they do is they say, you know, now that I ate my oatmeal and took my medicine, I owe myself a treat. Great question.
That actually leads me to my question. So you've demonstrated very convincingly that making small changes in the school cafeteria environment can make big behavioral differences. But how do you know the kids are just throwing away their apple in the end? How do you know that actually affects BMI or any sort of health outcome?
Yeah, well, it's a good question because we actually weigh plate waste. And you can't really do this stuff and just say, geez, sales of things are going up. We have to sit there and kind of weigh plate waste as it goes through, so that's why we know whether they're eating or not. Apples get a little bit dicey because some fruit people can take. But that's how we know it's being eaten. How do we know it's going to affect BMI? We don't.
What about even food waste? Does
Well, yeah,
what
we
tend
look
to be
at food
thrown
waste.
away tend to be the unhealthy stuff? Like my daughter will throw away her carrots and over her, French
Yeah,
fries.
yeah. Well, so food intake and food waste are really just kind of the same equation. So if we know that food intake is going up, that people are eating, let's say, 70% of their fruit compared to 20% they used to eat, we also know that waste has dropped from 80% down to 30%. Yeah. We don't know how it relates to BMI and the other side, and that would be ungodly messy to look at because kids are growing, they're changing, stuff's happening at home. So yeah, we don't even try to track BMI. We don't even try to track health indicators. At this point, I think maybe the second generation of that research can kind of do that. Mm-hmm. Thanks for your question.
Observation and then a question. You're right about the stores. In fact, if you looked at the new remodels of the big stores, nationwide changes, Kroger's, which we have QFC here, and King Soopers in Colorado, or Safeway, a lot of them are now redesigned where the fruits and vegetables are what you see first going in. The question is that, in the 90s, there was a shift with school districts bringing in the fast food services. It's for twofold. One, to reduce operational costs within the school district and the budget. And two, it brought in sponsorship dollars. On your work and your experience, what's been, if any, pushback by some of the bigger companies like Pizza Hut and Domino's and McDonald's that were supplying the school districts?
It's a good question. What's the pushback of the schools that have actually entered into those kiosk sort of things? And I'm not sure what that would be, but I think one of the things that initially, anytime you suggest something to a company or whatever, the first reaction is, oh my God, this is terrible. But then you find them saying, well, wait a minute, how can we solve this? How can we do this in a way that actually is profitable? So now you see a whole lot more water being sold instead of diet pop and things like this. My wonder in this case would be when somebody says, hey, look, here's the deal. You can keep your Pizza Hut thing here, but you're going to have to make these changes to it. It doesn't have to be the same thing you sell outside in the streets, but you're going to have to make these changes to it. They're going to go, oh my God, okay. and so they'll think, if they want to stay in the schools, they'll think of a way to maybe make some of these tweaks and changes to make it fit within the guidelines. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. Why did you say Americans, a stomach, they don't get food cues from their stomach? You said in France, it's their stomach and their taste and...
Yeah, I think that's a good point because you're looking at sort of the different cultures of things. Now, oftentimes people will say, well, these studies, they work in America, but do they work elsewhere? It's like, yeah, we've done them in about probably 14 different countries. And they work almost everywhere because of this. If you end up having, let's say, a typical Taiwanese or Dutch breakfast or French breakfast, they are really patterned. They're like your friend who just eats oatmeal all the time. Okay? They eat their little croissant, their piece of cheese, their milk, and that's it. So there's really not a lot of opportunity for external cues to push them in eating another half a bowl of Fruit Loops, for instance. Okay? Whereas, what's our typical breakfast here in the United States? I mean, think of what your typical breakfast is. God, I mean, sometimes it's me, like in the dark, eating out of a breakfast cereal thing and washing it down with a Diet Coke. I mean, sometimes it's a bowl of cereal where I actually pour milk on it. Sometimes I'm heating up pizza. I mean, our breakfasts are crazy in the United States. Sometimes we skip them. So the less patterned a person's behavioral script is for a meal, the more they can be influenced by these things around them. It's just that countries like Taiwan or France or the Netherlands have very patterned breakfasts and lunches, which is why I think we don't see weird things happen. But you bring those same people into a buffet luncheon or you bring them into something they're unfamiliar with, they're not going to be a whole lot different than the way most of us are. But, I think there's also the thing that they really know how to enjoy food. But there's no way we're going to be able to program that in Americas. I think it's, it's probably not going to happen for at least a couple generations.
My question is along the same lines. I wonder if we teach our children not to listen to those cues of being full. I've just noticed that, at the dinner table with different children, they say they're full, and it's like, no, you can't be full. I've taken a few, but you've taken only a few bites. You've got to eat more, and I just wonder if that teaches our children not to listen to those cues.
Really good point. We did a study on the Clean Plate Club a while back, and we took a look at, these are little 4-year-old gooblets in preschool, and we sent them home with a questionnaire for their parents, and the questionnaire asked them a bunch of these 20 questions. Of course, 19 we could care less about. They're distractor questions. The only question we cared about is, to what extent do you insist your child clean their plate? Okay, and that ranged from, nope, never insist at all, to yes, by golly, I do it really extremely. Now think about when you grew up. Where were your parents on this continuum? One from, no, they're free-range eaters. To, if you don't finish your vegetables, you're not getting dessert. Okay, think of where you were in that. Well, the next day what happened is these kids came, and we gave them, they had a dessert buffet, okay? They came in, we let all kids after lunch take as many desserts as they wanted, little bitty desserts. What do you think happened with the kids whose mom and dad say, you are going to clean your plate? Did they take more or less than the other kids? Yeah, we weren't sure what to expect. We found they take, on average, about 44% more dessert. Because what happens, this is the first time that this little kid has any control over his food environment, because he didn't the night before. So what do? It's like, they act out in a big way. But one of the things that goes on with this, and that I think is relevant to consider, is what parents do. And that, anybody who's had a child and saw that in the first 2 weeks the child was starting to lose weight, which every kid apparently does, you start panicking. It's like, oh my God, no, they're going to die and it's my fault. Here, have some more ice cream. Here, you can have my pizza. And so as parents, we sort of think, my God, at least if I get them to eat, at least they're not going to starve. I don't know what else I'm doing right, but I think that's the right thing to do. And I think that insecurity as parents drives us for a long time. But I think what we also end up finding is that a lot of people, parents who say, when we do a food diary of their kid, when we have them do a food diary of what they feed their kids, a lot of these are parents who say, well, you didn't have much for lunch, so here, why don't you have a nice snack 45 minutes before dinner? And we find this happens a lot, that a lot of people say their kids don't eat very good meals. We're also giving them snacks during the day. And one of the things that we've started, and this is kind of cool, is that we've been encouraging parents that when you feed your kids, instead of having everything sitting on the table, give them the vegetables and the salad first, and then you bring the pasta around. Because if you say, okay, we've got some green beans, we have some salad, we have some pasta, what's every kid in the world going to go toward? They're going to go to pasta right away. Sir.
Hi. Are there certain populations that you think are more susceptible to the kind of, mindless eating stuff?
That's a great question. That is a really great question, and that has been something we've been looking at for a long time. And one thing we're doing is, your question of emotional eaters is great, because we're doing a big study actually for CBS, actually next Wednesday, where we've got an emotional eating scale, and we're trying to see if emotional eaters are more, if people who are prone to emotional eating are also more prone to these cues. But what is so cool about that question is we've got an article coming out within the month at PLOS Medicine, where what we found is, and this is really cool, I think. One of the things we found is that if you give little kids who are between 6 and 10 bigger, smaller bowls, okay, what we find is that if the kids are extroverted kids, they are grossly, grossly more likely to overpour if you change a cue than if they're an introverted kid. Introverted kids, when you change things around them, they seem to be much more sort of measured in what they do, but the extroverted kid's like, oh my God, fill it up. And I think this could be for a number of reasons. It could be partly because they're just totally ADD distracted, but it could also just be because they are more just exuberant in other parts of their life. So it's a great question.
I guess I have a second part too. How would you recommend using these sort of techniques to reach, I guess, sort of harder to reach populations, maybe people who are lower income and living, harder lifestyles for public health professionals to get to?
Well, that's it was hard to reach population, like intuits. I mean, yeah.
People who are maybe less interested in changing their behavior.
So one thing that we're doing, and I think there's a couple mechanisms for this, and I mean the WIC program and the SNAP program, or food stamps, can have some mechanisms, particularly because there's an educational component to the WIC program. Something that we've been working on is taking the principles for the smarter lunchrooms and moving them into soup kitchens and food pantries. Now you can say, yeah, but you're still not getting everybody. And you're like, yeah, you're right. But we're going to try to take a step in that direction. And in addition to setting up soup kitchens and food pantries so people take the healthy stuff and not 7 boxes of pasta, we hope to move things in the right direction. And probably the stage 2 might be to try to come up with some sort of collateral that would be useful to them. Great question. Thank you very much. Well, folks, thank you very much and we'll see you down at the reception.